That was the Ukrainian long Neptune missile, and Ukraine just made history by using it. For the first time ever, Ukraine used it in a combat and destroyed a Russian refinery. This was a clear message to Vladimir Putin. Ukraine is getting stronger, and Russia will not be safe until he stops this senseless invasion. This missile has a range of 1,000 kilometers or 620 miles. That means 70% of Russia's oil refineries are now within Ukraine's range. On top of this, Neptune is entirely domestically produced. That means, unlike ATACMS and Storm Shadows, no foreign country has any restrictions on how Ukraine chooses to use this missile and where it chooses to target it. This is definitely a very powerful weapon that's now in Ukraine's arsenal. So today, let's answer some very important questions. How did Ukraine get this missile, and why is it so powerful? Now, I'm no munition expert, so here's former Navy SEAL Chuck Farr explaining the details of this weapon in our new series, Downrange.
It's 2022. After the Russian attack and seizure of the Ukrainian radar station on Snake Island, the guided missile cruiser Moskva is patrolling the Black Sea 160 kilometers off the coast of Ukraine. The pride of the Russian fleet, Moskva's surface search radar is obscured by a heavy squall of rain. But the ship's crew fears nothing. They command a missile-slinging cruiser designed to hunt and kill U.S. aircraft carriers. Moskva's literally the baddest warship in the Black Sea. It's April 13th, 2022, and the cruiser Moskva, flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, is a doomed ship. We're about to take a deep dive into the tech of Ukraine's Neptune cruise missile, ship killer turned long-range strike platform. In 2022, Ukraine's indigenously produced Neptune anti-ship missile was unknown, but to an admiring cadre of NATO naval officers and a handful of surface warfare gamer geeks. But Neptune's waiting in the wings was about to be over. That April day, Moskva's air search radar was on standby, and the ship's surface search radar was obscured by bands of rain squalls. The ship's radar operators have only seconds to comprehend that two blips emerging from a rain squall could pose a possible danger to their ship. But out of the rain squall, two Ukrainian R-360 Neptune anti-ship cruise missiles skim the surface at 500 miles an hour and turn towards the port beam of the cruiser. They smash into the hull and detonate just above the waterline. Torn stem to stern by the explosion, the Slava-class cruiser is on her way to the bottom. In their combat debut, Ukraine's R-360 Neptunes crashed into the global stage with a thunderous bang, sinking the Russian flagship. Two subsonic killers, 900 kilometers an hour, carrying 150-kilogram warheads, skimming the waves at 10 feet. They sent 12,490 tons of Kremlin arrogance to the seabed. Born from the Soviet KH-35's DNA at Kyiv's Luch Design Bureau, the Neptune was forged as a naval strike missile. It had a modest 200-kilometer range, radar-dodging flight controls, and was lethal to ships up to 9,000 tons. The original Neptunes operated at a speed of approximately 0.8 or 0.9 times the speed of sound. They were employed as sea-skimming flight profile and maintained an altitude of 3 to 10 meters above the water in terminal phase. The original Neptunes used inertial navigation combined with an active radar homing system, featuring a radionics seeker that exploited the radar contrast of ships against the sea for precise targeting. Launched from a truck-based US Pu-360 mobile platform carrying 4 missiles, anti-ship Neptunes relied on a solid-fuel booster for initial ascent and a Motor Sich MS-400 turbofan for sustained flight. Again, in its initial variant, offering a modest range of 280 to 300 kilometers. Physically, the original missile measured 5 meters in length, including its booster, and weighed in at about 870 kilograms, making it a compact yet potent weapon in Ukraine's arsenal. But in 2023, Ukraine began the process of adapting the Neptune into a land attack variant, expanding its role to strike ground targets, with its first reported combat use coming later that year. Retaining its subsonic speed of about 900 kilometers an hour, the initial land attack versions adjusted altitude for overland flight, likely cruising at several hundred meters before descending to a low terminal approach to bypass short-range and point defense SAM complexes near to targets. The first land attack variants' guidance were enhanced with GPS alongside inertial navigation, improving accuracy against static land targets despite ground clutter, with the original radar seeker possibly being retained or upgraded by land-following image-guided target seeks. Using the same booster and turbofan, the Neptune's range increased to an estimated 300 to 360 kilometers, as confirmed by Ukrainian officials in 2023. Neptune was reaching out farther and farther. Combat validation came on August 23, 2023, when land-attack Neptune variants destroyed an S-400 air defense system at Cape Tarkhan-Kanut in occupied Crimea, followed by strikes on September 14th, also targeting an additional S-400 system near Yevpatronivka. In this early variant attack, the warhead remained at 150 kilograms, though unconfirmed reports suggest modernization efforts might have increased it to 300 kilograms of explosives, reflecting Ukraine's ongoing efforts to refine the missile's lethality. By 2024 to 2025, the Neptune evolved further into the Long Neptune, an extended-range, multi-role cruise missile designed for deep strikes against both naval and land targets. Debuting in combat on 14 March 2025, the speed stayed in the high subsonic range with a rumored transonic sprint capability, allowing it to approach targets at nearly the speed of sound. But that reach and payload turned the Neptune into a deep strike surface-to-surface juggernaut. From a coastal ship killer, it morphed into a missile that could claw at Russia's hinterlands, a Ukrainian answer to Western heavyweights like the Storm Shadow, and all of it the product of Ukrainian innovation and built under siege. Ukraine's cunning amplifies the Long Neptune's menace. Neptune strikes are planned in painstaking detail. They've paired the Neptune with MALD decoys, MALD standing for Miniature Air-Launched Decoys, from the United States. The MALD is launched by fighter planes and is a semi-autonomous flying decoy. Delivered into hostile airspace by Ukrainian strike fighters, the MALD can copy and reflect enemy radar signals, presenting itself as various types or even numbers of targets to spoof Russian air defenses. As the Long Neptunes transit hostile airspace, MALD's radar-jamming phantoms flood Russian air defense sensors with false targets, letting Neptunes slip through the chaos. Electronic countermeasures further cloak the missiles, scrambling enemy radar and even control systems. It's a 1-2 punch. Decoys and electronic countermeasures blind the bear, while the Long Neptunes deliver the kill shot. This isn't just tech, it's battlefield guile, honed by a nation fighting for its life. Maintaining its subsonic speed of 0.9 Mach, the Long Neptune likely employs a mixed altitude profile, cruising at higher altitudes, potentially thousands of meters, for turbofan efficiency before dropping low in the terminal attack phases. The Neptune's guidance systems are advanced to include GPS and inertial navigation, redundant systems that possibly incorporate terrain reference navigation, or TERCOM, and anti-jam features for precision in contested environments. The missile's extended fuselage accommodates additional fuel, pushing its range to 400 kilometers in early estimates, and up to 1,000 kilometers, or 600 miles of range, by March 2025, as confirmed by President Zelensky after it struck the Tupas oil refinery in Russia. Neptune's warhead was also upgraded to 350 kilograms, doubling its original payload, with indications that it may exceed this in 2025 for greater impact on hardened targets. While its length now surpasses the original 5 meters and its weight far exceeds 870 kilograms due to the added fuel and payload, the exact specifications remain classified, underscoring Ukraine's rapid advancements in missile technology amid the ongoing conflict. The Neptune's strike log reads like a Russian obituary. Historically, the Moskva sinking stands as its crowning blow. April 13th, 2022, a day that Moscow still mourns. But the long Neptune's recent rampage is deadlier still. By May 2024, it saw it obliterate the Port Kavaz oil terminal that links Russia and Crimea, sinking ferries at pierside in Krasnodar. Putin's critical supply lines had been hit by missiles after penetrating more than 300 kilometers of heavily defended Russian airspace. No mean feat. By June 2024, a long Neptune strike turned a Shahed drone base in Yeysk into rubble, a precision jab at Russia's terror toys. Then, 14 March 2025, Zelensky unleashed its full fury, a 1,000-kilometer strike at the Tuapse oil refinery, and a fireball that gutted Moscow's fuel network. Each hit landed with mauled and ECM wizardry, threading the needle through Russia's vaunted defenses. From a sea-skimming ship's lair to an intermediate-range land stalker, then a long-range Reaper, the Neptune tracks Ukraine's war. Its range ballooned from 200 to 1,000 kilometers. Its payload swelled to 350 kilograms, and its speed, steady at just under the speed of sound, belies a reach that keeps Russia guessing. With decoys and electronic trickery, Ukraine ensures that these missiles don't just fly, they strike. The Kremlin's rear bleeds, its losses mount, and the Neptune, once a naval dagger, now carves a path to victory. Putin's nightmare has a name, and it's Ukrainian-made.
The first strike Ukraine carried out using the long Neptune definitely sent the message loud and clear, because the refinery Ukraine decided to target is still burning for the second day straight. Here's a clip. As if this wasn't bad news enough for Vladimir Putin, Poland is now waking up too. Polish Prime Minister has made it clear that Poland is not going to just wait around for a future Russian invasion. Because if history is any proof, Russia loves invading Poland. That's why Poland is rearming, upping its defense budget, and on top of that, it's seeking nuclear weapons. Now, Poland already had one of the highest defense spending in NATO, spending around 4.7% of its GDP. On top of that, Poland already has an army of 220,000 personnel that makes it the strongest army in Europe and third strongest in NATO. But Polish leaders are realizing that even that may not be enough, because Russia is raising an army that's 1.6 million personnel, and that's exactly why Poland has announced new plans. It now plans to grow its army to 500,000 personnel, and on top of that, it's planning to make sure every single adult male in Poland is well trained and in reserves in case there is a Russian invasion. Poland knows that the best way to avoid a war is to prepare for it, and the best deterrent in today's world is nuclear weapons. That's exactly why this is what Polish Prime Minister just said.
Poland must reach for the most modern capabilities, including those related to nuclear weapons and modern unconventional weapons. Therefore, we are facing a very serious race. And this is a race for security, not a race to war.
And it's not just Poland that's waking up to Putin's aggression. Even European Union is waking up. Here we have the President of the European Commission sending the message loud and clear.
Putin has proven time and again that he is a hostile neighbor. He cannot be trusted. He can only be deterred. And we know that Russia's military complex is outproducing ours. If we look at the military expenditure in real terms, the Kremlin is spending more than all of Europe combined. Europe's production is still on a lower order of magnitude. And beyond traditional capabilities, the range of threats that we face is getting broader by the day. I know that the European Parliament argued for years that Europe needs to do more, and you were absolutely right. And this is more dangerous today, the era we live in, so Europe really needs to step up.
You know how when you're arguing with someone and they know they're losing, so they resort to personal attacks? Well, it seems like Russia is getting to that point, because this is what Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov had to say after hearing the president's comments.
Führer Ursula, is mobilizing everybody, everybody to remilitarize Europe.
For some reason, Russia is truly worried about Europe mobilizing, all the while Russia has an army of 1.6 million personnel. This is even more staggering when you realize that Russia's population is only around 140 million people, while Europe has a population of 500 million people. So Europe is well within its rights to remilitarize its countries, because at the end of the day, it's Russia that's making the world a dangerous place. It's Russia who doesn't want a ceasefire, and it's not just Putin and Russian leaders who want to continue this war. Even the Kremlin TV wants to push propaganda on Russian people so they don't turn against Putin when he rejects this ceasefire. In fact, this is what Russian TV is telling the Russian population.
People are going to get killed, lots of people.
So we are now smashing their faces, and then we say, now let's have a pause so they can pump you with weapons and intelligence, so that in 30 days you can hold us back or something. Oh, God. Well, I can say more. Now, Witkoff, I want to note that they signed it. Do you understand? They stated. They finished the press conference and stated that. One thing is clear, they figuratively signed it. Yes. What they are saying now, and what's important, is that Ukraine forced America to go back to supplying it with weapons and intelligence data, which, judging by the strike on Moscow, it never stopped doing. Therefore, one thing is clear here. Our tasks are set by the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, and we will fulfill them. We are deeply indifferent to what these people have agreed upon. And for those who thought that Trump will come and everything would be fine for us, no, not fine. Don't lose your minds. In fact, this is already a failure of the peace plan. Russia has only two allies, the Army and the Navy, and our secret trump card is the strategic missile forces. Therefore, we are calmly and systematically solving the tasks set by the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. Well, by the way, let me remind you that all this has no meaning at all. This is just the beginning of a long negotiation process. One thing is certain here. Macron is following a path well known in the 1930s that only lead to one thing. Any war with Russia ends with a few obvious results. The partition of Poland and the fact that a Russian soldier ends up in the capital of a country that has decided to go to war with Russia. The only thing, I appeal to my comrades' descendants because things happen. Please don't leave. Do not repeat Gorbachev's mistake this time. If we have reached and planted, we have to stand until the end. No goodwill gestures. It was a bad idea for Khrushchev to make a goodwill gesture to Finland back then. And to this day, we all are confronting the consequences of what Gorbachev did. And Yeltsin.
Now, as you guys know, we're independent creators over here. We cover news completely self-funded. It's funded by YouTube ads, by you guys hitting the like button and watching our videos. But sometimes it is a struggle to get monetized on YouTube. And that's why we would greatly appreciate your support if you can take a second and maybe become a member down below. Now, this is only if you're able to, but it costs as little as $5, and it would greatly help us out in our effort to stay independent and keep you guys informed on the world news. So thank you so much, and if you're interested, you can become a member by clicking the join button down below.
North Korean soldiers are starting to show their true colors. It's becoming painfully clear that Vladimir Putin may already be regretting his decision to bring them into Russia. What initially seemed like a last-ditch effort to strengthen Russian forces has rapidly devolved into a series of blunders and disturbing incidents that are causing more harm than good. Reports first surfaced of North Korean soldiers betraying and even killing several Russian troops on the front lines. This was likely due to miscommunication and a lack of proper training. Since then, things have taken an even darker turn, and now it's becoming a pattern of behavior that is impossible to ignore. On January 5th, the Inform Napalm Intelligence Collective published a drone video from the Makhnovka region. The footage showed a couple of North Korean soldiers forcibly removing two elderly Russian civilians from their own home. What's worse is that the civilians were then forced to stand outside in freezing temperatures, completely exposed, while the soldiers used the house for cover to shield themselves from potential Ukrainian drone strikes. This is a new low. But for those familiar with the histories of these two regimes, it is not entirely surprising. Both governments have long been known for their oppressive practices, not just against their enemies, but also their own people. From the labor camps in North Korea to the documented abuses of Russian troops during wartime, cruelty seems to be running in their blood. Before we dive deeper into these specifics, take a moment to hit the like button if you're finding this breakdown valuable. It helps us out tremendously in the algorithm. Take Mariupol, for example. In March 2022, the city's drama theater became a refuge for over 1,000 civilians desperate to escape the violence. Families, including many women, children, and the elderly, sought safety within its walls, hoping they'd be spared from the chaos outside. To make it unmistakably clear that this was a civilian shelter, the word children was painted in massive, bold letters on the ground outside, written in Russian. It was a plea for protection, a message to anyone who might target the area. But it wasn't enough. Or maybe the enemy just didn't care. Because on March 16th, a devastating airstrike hit the theater. The explosion was so massive it tore through the building, causing it to collapse almost entirely. People inside were crushed under the rubble or killed instantly. Some managed to crawl out, bruised and battered, but most never made it. Investigators later estimated that at least 600 people lost their lives in the attack. Others believe the true number could be even higher. This bombing in Mariupol is still one of the deadliest attacks on civilians during the war, but it wasn't an isolated act of violence. The Bucha massacre is another chilling example of Russian brutality, a moment that shocked the world to its core. You see, when Russian forces withdrew from the town of Bucha in late March 2022, they left behind a horrific scene. Ukrainian authorities discovered over 450 bodies scattered across the town. Many were civilians, and the condition of the bodies revealed unspeakable horrors. Some victims were found with their hands tied behind their backs, a clear sign of execution. Others showed signs of torture, including bruises, broken bones, and gunshot wounds at close range. Streets were littered with bodies, some left in the open as if to send a chilling message. Mass graves were discovered, with dozens of bodies hastily buried in shallow pits, evidence of an attempt to cover up the atrocities. Survivors told stories that were almost too horrific to comprehend. They described Russian soldiers targeting entire families, executing parents alongside their children. Women were reportedly sexually assaulted and then killed, their bodies discarded with no semblance of dignity. Witnesses recounted soldiers storming homes, dragging people out, and shooting them in front of neighbors. Even children were not spared. Some were murdered outright, while others were forced to watch their families die before being killed themselves. But the violence extended beyond physical harm. Survivors were left with deep psychological scars, living in terror every day, uncertain if they would be the next to die. The massacre was widely condemned as a war crime. Investigators documented the atrocities with photographs, videos, and survivor testimonies, creating a grim record of what happened in Bucha. Human rights organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch launched investigations, and forensic teams worked to identify the dead and gather evidence of war crimes. It goes without saying that the international community was outraged, with world leaders calling for accountability. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Bucha shortly after the massacre was revealed, calling it proof of genocide. The images and stories from Bucha became a symbol of the war's horrors, galvanizing support for Ukraine and pushing countries to impose tougher sanctions on Russia. But despite overwhelming evidence, including satellite imagery showing bodies lying in the streets for weeks during Russia's occupation, Russia has repeatedly denied responsibility. They claim the massacre was staged or fabricated, a terrible attempt to rewrite history in the face of undeniable facts. As of January 2023, over 18,000 civilians had been killed in this war, including at least 500 children. These numbers aren't just statistics. They represent lives taken intentionally, the result of deliberate and targeted strikes by Russian forces. Homes, schools, hospitals, and evacuation corridors have all been targeted, leaving no doubt about the intent behind these attacks. By 2024, the situation worsened. While exact figures are still being compiled, reports indicate a 30% increase in civilian casualties compared to the previous year. Heartbreakingly, more children were killed or injured in the first 9 months of 2024 than during the entirety of 2023. And even these numbers barely scratch the surface because many areas still remain under heavy fighting or occupation, making it impossible to document the true scale of the atrocities. But it's not just Ukrainians who are suffering. Russian civilians are being exploited too. The Kremlin has forcibly conscripted hundreds of thousands of men, many with no training, sending them to the front lines as cannon fodder. In the Russian army, human life is valued less than a Kalashnikov assault rifle. It is utterly disposable. A conscript's value is tied to the potential payment for his death, which is a significant expense for the Russian treasury. But even in life, a soldier has worth to corrupt commanders who exploit him through brutal methods. For instance, conscripts are often tortured or placed in makeshift punishment cells, like holes in the ground, and subjected to extortion. Commanders demand bribes to stop the abuse, knowing the soldier is desperate to escape the torment. Once they've extracted as much as they can, these men are sent on meat assaults to ensure there are no witnesses to the mistreatment. But the exploitation doesn't stop there. Many conscripts are deliberately listed as missing in action, even before assaults begin. This allows the Kremlin to avoid paying death benefits and keeps official casualty numbers artificially low. Families back home are left in the dark, with no closure, while the state avoids any financial obligation. Even for those who make it to the battlefield, survival is grim. A single soldier's brief 2-week existence in combat costs the Russian government 6 to 12 million rubles. This includes the payment for signing a contract, basic logistics, and salary. However, most soldiers never live long enough to collect their wages. To maintain the pace of their offensives and replace mounting losses, these recruits receive a maximum of 2 weeks of training, often much less. Many are sent into combat completely unprepared, equipped with outdated gear and with little understanding of the battlefield they're being thrown into. The result is a cycle of exploitation and death. So far, Russia has lost an estimated 730,000 troops in the conflict. Yet the offensive shows no signs of slowing down. Despite staggering losses, the Kremlin continues to push forward, seemingly indifferent to the human cost. According to Estonian analyst Artur Rehi, the average life expectancy of a newly recruited Russian soldier after signing a contract is shockingly short, just 2 weeks to a month. These poorly organized offensives inevitably result in thousands of deaths and casualties every single day. This is largely because the Russians continue launching attacks across multiple areas without clear plans, relying on relentless waves of soldiers. Similarly, North Koreans are facing grim odds on the battlefield, but for them, the situation is even worse than it is for Russian troops. Every single North Korean soldier sent to fight in Putin's war could be wiped out within weeks, as nearly 100 are being killed or wounded every day. The Institute for the Study of War, ISW, which has been closely monitoring developments since the invasion began in February 2022, released a damning report on January 16th. It stated that the entire North Korean contingent of 10,000 to 12,000 troops stationed in Kursk Oblast could be killed or maimed in just 12 weeks. That's only 3 months. Earlier this year, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reported that 3,800 North Korean soldiers had already been killed or injured in the Kursk region. South Korea's National Intelligence Service offered a slightly lower estimate, putting the number at around 3,000. Meanwhile, U.S. officials reported that more than 1,000 North Korean troops were killed in just the final weeks of December 2023 alone. The ISW estimates that North Korean forces are suffering losses of roughly 92 troops a day. If this horrifying casualty rate continues, Kim Jong-un's entire contingent could be wiped out by mid-April. What's more concerning is that this high attrition rate is not due to strategic offensives, but the Kremlin's careless approach and stupid strategy of pushing wave after wave straight into the meat grinder. Ukraine provided further evidence of this grim reality when it intercepted a phone call between a Russian nurse in a Moscow hospital and her husband, a soldier stationed in Kharkiv. In the call, the nurse revealed that every day hundreds of injured North Korean soldiers are arriving at her hospital by train. Now imagine if hundreds of wounded are being sent back daily, then the number of those dying on the battlefield before evacuation must be significantly higher. The nurse went on to describe how the hospital had been ordered to dedicate entire floors exclusively for the treatment of North Korean soldiers. These sections were sealed off, and no one other than the assigned staff was allowed access. Meanwhile, injured Russian soldiers were packed into overcrowded and understaffed wards, receiving far less attention. The disparity in treatment is stark, and the nurse suspected that once the North Korean soldiers were stabilized, they would be sent right back to the front lines to face almost certain death again. This cycle of injury, recovery, and redeployment is compounded by the horrifying tactics reported by Ukrainian forces. A Ukrainian colonel shared that North Korean troops are being forced to walk through booby-trapped fields as human mine detectors. They are sent in a single line, spaced only 3 to 4 meters apart. When one soldier steps on a mine and is blown up, medics move in to recover the body, while the rest of the line continues forward as if nothing had happened. This process repeats, turning each soldier into nothing more than a disposable tool for clearing the battlefield. It's important to note that these soldiers are not equipped with any specialized tools or training to deal with mines. They're just told to walk until they spot or hit a mine. Whereas, on the other hand, Ukraine's way of handling minefields is the complete opposite. They rely on trained deminers, specialized equipment, and careful coordination to navigate dangerous areas. To them, their soldiers' lives matter the most. In another shocking incident, approximately 24 men believed to be North Korean fighters were captured on drone footage as they were forced to jog toward enemy lines. But these soldiers made no effort to find cover as they crossed an icy field in full view of Ukrainian drones. The video shows some of them crouching briefly on the ground, while others jog almost carelessly. A Ukrainian veteran who reviewed the footage remarked that this scene was like a dream come true for mortar and machine gunner units. He noted that the attack was stopped quickly, though it remains unclear if all the men perished in the assault. Do you guys remember the ultimatum that was given to Wagner Group militants, where they were forced to either push forward regardless of the risks or face execution? Now it seems like North Korean troops have been subjected to the same brutal orders. A diary was found on the body of a dead North Korean soldier. One line stood out: "Defending the homeland is a sacred duty of every citizen and the highest mission. I will join the front lines of this operation and sacrifice my life." This entry speaks volumes about the mindset of these troops. It provides a glimpse into their perspective and possibly explains why North Korean soldiers have been taking their own lives to avoid getting captured by Ukrainian forces. You see, after an intense battle with Russian forces this week, Ukrainian special forces were scouring dead bodies from the snowy western terrain of the Kursk region, where they discovered corpses of over a dozen North Korean enemy troops. Shockingly, one soldier was still alive, but when they tried to provide aid and ask him to surrender, the injured North Korean detonated a grenade, killing himself in the process. Fortunately, the Ukrainian forces escaped unharmed, but the incident left them visibly shaken. This incident is the latest documentation of the lengths the North Korean troops are willing to go to avoid capture and becoming prisoners of war, so that Ukraine can't present them as proof of Pyongyang and Moscow's blatant military alliance.